There's something I want to talk about today that I think sits right at the center of everything we're trying to accomplish with American manufacturing renaissance. And it's this: what happens when a company becomes more efficient? That sounds like a pretty straightforward question. If we can make a product faster with fewer defects, less waste, and less labor, that's good, right? Of course it is. But there's another question that we don't always talk about. Who benefits from that increased efficiency? Because I think the answer to that question has enormous implications for the future of American manufacturing. And it may help explain something I've seen throughout my career. Why can there sometimes be resistance from the workforce, including unions, to lean initiatives, continuous improvement and automation, or productivity improvements? Is it because workers don't want the company to succeed? I don't believe that. Is it because they don't want to make their jobs easier? I don't believe that either. I think there's something much more understandable happening. For decades, we've trained people to associate increased productivity with scarcity. If a process that once required 3 people can now be done by 2, the immediate question becomes, what do we do with the third position? And sometimes the answer is we eliminate it. Now put yourself in the position of that workforce. You've been told that continuous improvement is good. You've been asked to participate. You've been asked to identify waste. You've been asked to make processes more efficient. You've been asked to help the company become more productive. And then you watch productivity improve and someone loses their job. Why would you enthusiastically embrace the next improvement initiative? Why would you give leadership every piece of information you have? Why would you tell them exactly where the inefficiencies are? Why wouldn't you protect yourself? That's not necessarily resistance to improvement. That's a rational response to a scarcity system. And I think this is one of the most important conversations we can have about lean and continuous improvement in American manufacturing today. Because I don't think the tools are the problem. The tools work. We've seen them work. Toyota proved it. Lean practitioners have demonstrated it over and over again. The question is, what are we going to do with the capacity those tools create? For a long time, American manufacturing has operated under a scarcity mindset. We look at a difficult market and immediately think, how do we cut costs? How do we reduce headcount? How do we outsource? How do we get more production from fewer people? How do we protect this quarter's margin? And sometimes those decisions are necessary. I'm not naive about that. Manufacturing is cyclical. Markets change, customers disappear, costs increase, companies have to make difficult decisions. But what if we've allowed those short-term responses to become the default strategy? What if we've become so accustomed to protecting ourselves from contraction that we've forgotten how to build for expansion? That's the shift I want to talk about. Because radical alignment isn't simply about making a company more efficient. It's about creating an organization that can do more with the capacity it already has, and then use that capacity to grow. That's a very different philosophy. Instead of, we can eliminate one position, the question becomes, what could be accomplished if we had the capacity of one additional person? Maybe that means taking on another customer. Maybe it means reducing lead times or bringing work back from overseas. Maybe it means accepting a new program that you previously didn't have the capacity to support. or it means increasing throughput or growing revenue. Maybe it means investing in new equipment or paying people more or creating new opportunities or creating new career opportunities. And suddenly that third person's value isn't how much labor cost can we eliminate? It's what new capacity have we just created? That's abundance. Let's make this really simple. Imagine a manufacturing cell has 3 employees. Through process improvement, better material flow, improved tooling, better standard work, and the elimination of unnecessary motion, you discover that the same production volume can now be accomplished by 2 people. There are 2 very different ways leadership can respond. The first is we only need 2 people now. Eliminate the third position. That's a scarcity response. The second response, we can create additional capacity. What can we do with it? That's an abundance response. Maybe you increase production. Maybe you pursue a new customer. Maybe you use that person to cross-train other employees. Maybe you move them into quality improvement. You can have them work on You could have them work on preventative maintenance. Maybe you develop them into a supervisor, engineer, planner, or continuous improvement leader. Maybe you simply grow the business enough that you need all 3 people again, and then 3 more. Now lean isn't something the workforce fears. Lean becomes something the workforce wants, because improvement isn't threatening their future. Improvement is creating their future. That's a profound difference, but there's the part that's easy to miss. You can't simply announce this philosophy. You can't put abundance on a poster. You can't tell employees, don't worry, we're not going to eliminate your jobs, and expect trust to magically appear. Trust isn't created by declarations. Trust is created by repeated behavior. Employees watch what leadership does. They've learned to do this because they have to. They watch what happens when sales slow down. They watch what happens when a quarter is difficult. They watch what happens when an improvement initiative succeeds. They watch who gets promoted. They see who gets recognized. They see whether information is shared. And they watch whether problems are actually solved. And over time, they form a very clear understanding of what the organization really values. That's the real culture, not what the mission statement says, not what the leadership team says at the annual meeting, what actually happens. And that's why radical alignment starts with leadership. Leadership has to decide, what kind of organization are we building? Are we building an organization where every productivity improvement eventually becomes an opportunity to reduce labor? Or are we building an organization where productivity creates capacity, capacity creates growth, and growth creates opportunity? Those are fundamentally different systems. This is where I want to be especially fair. I've heard people say unions resist lean, and sometimes that may be true, but I think what we need to ask is why. Because if the historical experience of our workforce is management asks us to improve the process and then the improvement eliminates our jobs, then resistance isn't irrational, it's understandable and inevitable. And if we want that to change, leadership has to change the equation. We have to give people a reason to believe that improvement is going to make the pie bigger rather than simply divide the existing pie differently. That's the opportunity. And I think unions, workers, supervisors, engineers, and leadership can all benefit from the same fundamental outcome: a healthier, more profitable, growing manufacturing company. Because a growing company creates options. A shrinking company creates scarcity. And options are incredibly powerful. It can train, promote, innovate. It can pay better wages, add shifts, bring work back. It can survive downturns more easily and give people opportunities instead of constantly asking them to sacrifice. That's what abundance actually means. It doesn't mean pretending downturns don't exist. It means building an organization capable of absorbing the natural ebb and flow of the market without immediately defaulting to fear. This is something I want to make very clear about the Holy Grail method for American manufacturing. I've talked about doubling throughput and doubling revenue. And yes, I believe radical alignment can create the conditions for extraordinary improvements in both. But those aren't the end goal. They're the fuel. Because what do you do with increased throughput? What do you do with increased revenue and increased capacity? You have choices. You can use it to build resilience or invest in your workforce. You can create new products or expand. You can use it to increase wages, improve employee retention, create career paths, build reserves for the next downturn. You can reduce the fear that has become so common in American manufacturing. You can stop thinking about how to survive the next quarter and start thinking about what this company can become over the next 20 years. That's the transition from scarcity to abundance. And once you get there, leadership has a new responsibility: protect it. Because if you tell your workforce, we are building a company where growth creates opportunity, then you have to live that promise. You have to communicate, to share information, to be transparent about the business. You have to explain the why. To involve people in improvement and develop your leaders, you have to plan for the next downturn before it arrives and maintain the trust you've worked so hard to build. Because abundance isn't something you achieve once, it's a culture you have to actively perpetuate. And this is where I get really excited. Because imagine what happens if we start doing this across American manufacturing. Imagine a manufacturing company where employees aren't afraid to make processes more efficient because they know their contribution isn't automatically going to eliminate their job. Imagine a workforce that actively looks for waste because they know increased capacity creates opportunity. Imagine supervisors who aren't spending every day fighting emergencies and engineers who aren't constantly pulled away from improvement projects to contain yesterday's problems. Imagine leadership looking at productivity improvement and asking, how much can we grow because of this? Instead of, how many people can we eliminate because of this? That's a completely different mindset. And I don't think it's naive. I think it's strategic because the companies that can create trust around improvement are going to have a tremendous advantage. Their employees will participate. Their information will flow. Problems will surface earlier. Improvement will accelerate, and the organization will become more capable of responding to change quicker. That's what a winning team looks like. I've talked recently about the differences between Japanese and American manufacturing culture, and I want to be very clear. I don't want American manufacturing to become Japanese manufacturing. Japan has incredible lessons for us. Toyota has incredible lessons for us. Lean has incredible lessons for us. But America has its own strengths. We're bold, entrepreneurial, innovative. We're willing to take risks and challenge the impossible. We're willing to run towards a problem. That's not something I want to eliminate. I want to align it. I want to take the American hero and put that hero inside a system where the goal isn't to save the same emergency over and over again. The goal is to build something so strong that the emergency doesn't happen tomorrow. That's the evolution from heroics to systems, from scarcity to abundance, from surviving to growing, and ultimately from individual effort to a winning team. So if you're a manufacturing leader watching this, I'd like you to think about one question. When your organization gets more efficient, who benefits? Does the benefit primarily appear as reduced headcount, or does it create new capacity? And if you discover tomorrow that one process could be performed with 2 people instead of 3, what would your organization naturally do? Would everyone immediately think, great, we can eliminate a position? Or would someone ask, what could we build with the capacity we've just created? That question tells you a lot about your culture. And if you don't like the answer, that's okay. Because this isn't about blame. This isn't about shaming leadership. This is about awareness, and awareness gives you a choice. You can choose a different direction. I believe American manufacturing is at an important moment. We have incredible technology and incredible workers. We have incredible engineers and manufacturing knowledge. We have Lean, Six Sigma, Toyota production system, and we have decades of lessons to build upon. What we need now is leadership alignment to bring all of those strengths together, and I believe that starts with a very simple decision. We are no longer going to operate from the assumption that somebody has to lose for the company to win. We can build companies where the company wins and the workforce wins and the customer wins and the communities win. That's abundance. That's the future I want to help build. And that's why I'm freely sharing all of this knowledge and information, because I believe we can achieve this future together. I'm not here to teach you another set of lean tools. I'm here to help create the leadership environment where the tools you already have can finally reach their full potential. Because when leadership aligns, when trust grows, when information flows, when people understand the why, when employees feel safe speaking up, when problems are prevented instead of celebrated as heroic rescues, something incredible happens. The organization gets stronger. And when the organization gets stronger, growth becomes possible. More throughput, more revenue, more capacity, more opportunity, more stability, better jobs, and ultimately a future that people can believe in. That's the American manufacturing renaissance. And I believe it's possible. Not because America needs to become something it isn't, but because I believe we can become the strongest version of who we already are. So if you're a leader, a supervisor, an engineer, a production worker, a union member, a designer, a supply chain professional, or anyone who believes American manufacturing can be better, I want you here. I'm going to keep showing up every week. I'm going to keep sharing what I've learned over more than 20 years in this industry. And I'm going to keep giving you practical ideas you can take back into your organizations and use. Because this is bigger than a book. It's bigger than a consulting program. It's bigger than me. It's a movement towards a different future for American manufacturing. A future where improvement creates opportunity, where growth creates security, where leaders can trust, where workers believe in the future, where teams win together, and where American manufacturing doesn't simply survive the next downturn, but builds a future of sustainable abundance. If you believe that's possible, join me. Join the movement. Let's build this together.